Barbara and I wrote The Destined Hour right after I returned from Iran. It's the story of how both of us survived the captivity.
But why was this
I don't know.
Washington, D.C.?
It was a copy I got. I was able to get a copy of it.
Oh, afterwards.
Afterwards. Title is from Ferdowsi's. I call it Destined Hour because this was our both destinies. My name is Barry Rosen. I was born in Brooklyn on February 28, 1944. Went to college at the City University of New York at Brooklyn College. Graduated with a degree of political science. Went on to get my master's degree at Syracuse's School of International Affairs. And then from that time on, in May of 1967, I was off to Iran as a Peace Corps volunteer. And I traveled all over Iran as a Peace Corps volunteer. I loved traveling through Iran because of the history of Iran. I don't think most people understand how amazing Iranian architecture is, and most of all, the people of Iran. When Iranians talk about Mehman Navazi, they are, par excellence, the people who know how to treat a guest. Coming from a Jewish American family, we're very much like that. And so I felt at home in Iran. This was the first passport I've ever had, and going to Iran as a Peace Corps volunteer. As Peace Corps volunteers, spent 3 months in Vermont working with Iranians who were teaching us Farsi, Iranian Americans, and also Iranian culture. We had to learn about ta'aruf. It was something that I really wanted to do. I mean, it was interesting. I would like to go in the streets in Tehran, walk to the bazaar and talk to people, chune with people on. And at the same time, I thought it'd be important for me to take part in, at that time, the Shah of Iran had a Pekar Bisavadi, a program to fight illiteracy.
His Imperial Majesty, who personally took the initiative of launching the campaign against illiteracy, often inspects classes for children and adults in cities and villages.
And I would go to these illiteracy classes with a variety of Iranians, I would say working class Iranians. I met my wife in 1970. I came 71. We met on an airplane, in fact.
A plane that was going nowhere. In, I guess it was like 1970, the 747s first came out, and at Kennedy Airport, there was a singles party on the plane.
I was invited, and so she was invited with friends.
And the first words that he said to me was, "Is that an Iranian blouse you're wearing?" It was an Indian blouse. I mean, I didn't know from an Iranian blouse. But that sort of set the beginning of, I think, what my whole life has revolved around, which is Iran.
From that day on, I kept calling her, and finally we went out for the first time.
This one, we were first dating.
Had a position at the Voice of America as the head of the Central Asian desk. But I always wanted to go to Iran. And when the position opened up for the press attaché, I really pressed to get that position. And they needed somebody who had some good Farsi knowledge. I was selected. And I finally left in November of 1978, and by that time, the revolution had already began. When I arrived in my hotel, I knew I was in for a very difficult time. Iran was not the country that I left as a Peace Corps volunteer.
When Barry was sent to Iran, it was right after my daughter was born. We knew we were going to be going. We put our house in Virginia up for rent. And the revolution and unrest was already starting. Barry was told to remain home, which he did until just before Thanksgiving. And then he was told to go over, but families were being evacuated. So we just remained at that time at my parents' in Brooklyn.
Ambassador Sullivan, with the advice of the State Department, ordered every member of the embassy to go home. And I flew back to the United States. After being home for about a week, I was summoned to the State Department. The decision was made that we'd go back as a small embassy crew of about 70 people, as opposed to hundreds of people on a 26-acre embassy site. I accepted to go back. And, in retrospect, the question for me, and I always asked, and this is a question I had while I'm lying in Evin prison, why did I go back? November 4th, 1979 was a day that is etched in my soul. We had no indications whatsoever that anything was going to happen, anything imminent or dangerous was going to happen. But there happened to be, as was happening often, a march past the U.S. Embassy. Marching past the U.S. Embassy, screaming and yelling, as we always heard, Margbar America. By 10 in the morning, people, Iranian students, at that time I didn't know that they were students, but young men with pictures of Ayatollah Khomeini on their chest, start climbing the fence, the main gate to the embassy, and in numbers, large numbers, going over that fence, door to my office, which was maybe 100 feet from the embassy gate, was kicked open. And then one of these students, who I finally learned, students following the line of the Imam, said to me, you're a member of the nest of spies, Lorne Jesusan, and we're arresting you on behalf of the revolution of Iran. Put a blindfold over me, and they marched me out of my office.
He was supposed to come home for Thanksgiving, and that never happened because of the takeover on November 4th. The way I found out about that was, woke up early in the morning, and the phone rang downstairs, and my mother called me and says, your mother-in-law is on the phone and she sounds very upset. She heard on the news that the embassy had been taken over, and she's the one who told me. And for the longest time, we had no confirmation that Barry was even in the embassy when it was taken. As a matter of fact, he told me he was going to be traveling and he wouldn't be in the embassy, so my feeling and hope was that he wasn't taken at all, that he was out somewhere. I didn't find out until about a month into the crisis when his picture appeared in Newsweek magazine.
مرکز فساد امریکا را جوانها رفتن گرفتن و امریکایی هم که در اونجا بوده گرفتن و اون لانه فساد را به دست آوردن و امریکا هم هیچ غلطی نمیتونه بکنه.
I heard over the radio Ayatollah Khomeini saying, I support the actions of the students following the line of the Imam. And at that time, as injured and as crazed as I was over what just happened to me, I knew definitely that we were in for a long, long time.